Hello and welcome to Weekly MTG, the show where weekly we talk about MTG. I am Blake Rasmussen, and with me is someone who's at least in the top 5 of the Cheon rankings, Paul Cheon.
Every time I make a Cheon, though, it just I fall further.
You fall further down the rankings. That's accurate. Yeah. Today we've got a really cool show. Now I want to point out a few things. If you look at the bottom of our screen, if I can gesture in that direction, you can see all the things we're talking about. We've got our own little ticker to let you know where in the show we are, what's coming up, and all that jazz. I also want to point out, if you look, I'm trying to figure out where I can point, somewhere over under Charlie, you can see the Q&A section. I've been taking questions on Twitter all week, and we are also going to be taking questions from the Twitch stream. So if you're in chat right now and you have questions along the way, we have a moderator who will be feeding them to me. And if your questions are great and interesting, we'll talk about them on stream later in that segment.
Yeah.
So, Paul, why don't you tell us about the two illustrious gentlemen we have with us today?
All right. Well, I am first joined here by Bill Rose, the Vice President of R&D. He's worn multiple hats. He's been here very close to since the beginning, right? He's been here for a long time, one of the longest serving members of Wizards of the Coast. So can't think of anyone better to take us down memory lane.
And with him is Charlie Catino. So he, like Bill, was among the original playtesters of the game. Yep. So he's been playing it longer than you have. No matter who you are, he has been playing longer than you have. He currently oversees Duel Masters as well as the Transformers TCG effort, which is not out yet, but we're working
coming in
on
September.
September. All right. So today, why do I have these guys on? Because we are taking a trip down memory lane. Starting tomorrow, Grand Prix Las Vegas. Actually, Grand Prix Las Vegas is going on right now. People are there. People are having a blast. Coverage of Grand Prix Las Vegas starts tomorrow in the main event, all that jazz. So in honor of that event, which is a 25th anniversary birthday celebration, we're going all the way 25 years back. Mm-hmm. We could not possibly go back further without having Richard himself sitting here. Yeah. So who here is going to Vegas? Because you're going to Vegas.
I'm going to Vegas.
Paul
I am going right after this.
Right after this. Literally his bag's packed.
I got my bags packed. I'm ready to get on that plane and go to Vegas.
Okay, and you're going to be spell slinging
Saturday afternoon.
Saturday afternoon. Okay, and hot tip, he said before the show, if you want to win, you want to say you beat a member of R&D, go see Bill.
If you want to play against, play against the fish in R&D, it's the vice president. He's too busy.
He's got more important things to worry about.
I know where I stand in the R&D pecking order.
He's too busy doing vice president-y things, to actually be, putting his time in actually doing a lot of the playtesting.
One of the other cool things at Vegas is that we're going to have some posters for sale that are really cool. And if you haven't seen them yet, we're going to show them up on stream now in good old Wooburg order. So the first one is in the Johnnie poster, if we can get that up on screen, with art by, I'm definitely going to butcher some of these artists' names, Jeremy Paler. So this one features a Johnnie. It is hand-done ink and watercolor art. And the notes I have here say it uses a classical approach to the eyes. Leaving out pupils was a technique common to Roman sculpture. Next up, we have the blue one.
Ooh, the blue one. And I think this is Jace here. He is literally standing on an island representing the blue mana here. This is done by Marko Manev. I think I got that one too.
Maybe.
He has created a new space for film noir lighting in his work, and he's illustrated our 5 feature planeswalkers for the Origin set.
Yep, that was him as well. So that's if the style looks familiar, that is why. Next up, we have the Liliana poster. So this doesn't actually show much of Liliana. That's her hand, and then you can kind of see the skull at the bottom. This is done by Orlando Arocena. Maybe that's close. So he also did. If you saw the Art Deco style illustrations for the Kaladesh Inventors Fair, same artist. That was also Orlando. That part I know I'm pronouncing correctly.
Yeah. And moving on here, I think this is probably my favorite one. This is the red one, the red mana one from Tom Miotke. If you take a look here, there's Chandra with that phoenix. This does an amazing job at representing red through the ages. There's classic elements interlaced with our contemporary approach to the power of a planeswalker. If you notice, the triangular composition draws the eyes to a relatively small yet very powerful Chandra. And the background of the art was influenced by our classic mountain cards.
Ooh. And finally, we have the Nyssa Poster. This was done by Tracy Ching. It says here she's a self-taught digital artist, and that, the mana symbol has been recreated in the artist style, so it feels at home in Nyssa's hand. So the mana symbol in her hand is slightly tweaked from what we normally have, but that was some artistic styling on Tracy Ching's hand. Anyway, these posters are going to be available at Grand Prix Vegas, I believe for $5. So we've got a big celebration at Vegas going on right now. If you're there watching this, thank you. But also there are plenty of awesome things to do there, including a Beta Rochester draft that you have to qualify for. It's just that's a once in a lifetime experience.
That's a big game. Yeah.
Yes.
But today we're going to actually talk about some of those cards that you can get in that beta draft. So like we said, Bill and Charlie go way back. And we've also got, coming out this Friday, Jace's signature spellbook. So we thought it would be fun to go through everyone's, their own signature spellbook, especially looking at cards from back in the day. So let's start with the first spellbook from Bill.
Yeah, this is my 1992 spellbook.
1992, for those of you who don't know, before the game was out.
Before the game was out.
So what? Tell us a little bit about what that playtest group was like and how Richard got all those people together.
Yeah, so it was University of Pennsylvania, and Richard just started playing the game. In fact, the first incarnation of the game, people played from the same deck.
Okay.
Right, and they would draft back and forth. And then very quickly, Richard expanded into each person had their own pool of cards. And he would update them maybe every month. And then you had to track, like, new cards would come out, like your old cards were just worthless, had to throw them away and play the new cards. But you had to track Richard down to get your deck. So you were trying to track him down to get your deck.
The best way to do that, by the way, was to help Richard when he made the new cards.
Okay.
So he had the classic card cutting machine, and
Xerox,
if you helped
cut,
Richard make the
yes.
cards, you got your cards right away.
And that was
Oh,
how
nice.
Charlie ended up with 4 black lotuses. In
No,
his deck.
no.
And then sometimes, like, he'd lay the decks out, and then you'd pick the deck that you had. But there were a lot of people who were playing that you would know, and there were also a lot of people playing that you didn't know. So it was really like, it was this like social experience where you were trying to track down other people to. Once you've traded with everybody in your little pod, you had to go down and figure out what else, who else you could trade with.
It actually expanded our friend circle quite a bit.
It did.
How big was that initial group?
20, like, I think we got up to 30. Like,
At
people
near
would
the end,
come
yeah.
in, and there were always these people who were like, oh, this seems interesting, and then Richard would give them a deck, and they had no idea what to do. You had to hunt them down first, because you could just screw them with the trade. It was just like trying to pick the best cards out of them. And you'd get to them, and you'd be like, oh, Barry got to them first. All their good stuff.
Don't do that at home, kid.
All the
It's
good
not
stuff.
a nice way to
All
play
the good
Magic
stuff
the
was
Gathering.
fun.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about your signature spellbook. Up on the screen right now, we have Benelish Hero.
Yeah, so this was one that I learned very early on. I think I'm one of the few people who really understand how banding works.
There's 3 of you.
There's 3 of us.
Yeah.
And I just remember this card because, like, anytime I put it on the table, it seemed like I would win the game because people would just be like, we'd have combat, and they were like, tell me what happens. And I'd be like, oh, I win. And they'd be like, okay.
Best one drop
I mean, that's-
ever.
yeah.
Best one drop ever, yes.
That's more or less how banding works.
That's
is
kind of how banding,
I
that's how,
decide how things go.
Yes, that's how it worked on the Pro Tour. So that's one of the ones I remember.
All right. So what do we have? What do we
What
have
else do we
next?
have?
for your
Like
spell book?
Wrath of God. Oh, Winter Orb. So Winter Orb, this was another interesting card. This with Armageddon. One of the things that happened in the early playtest is you would play with a card, and if you, even if it was powerful, if you loved it, you tried to protect it, and if you didn't like it, you'd go after Richard. You'd be like, this card needs to change. Yeah. And this was one of the cards that I played with, not because I loved the effect, but I was like, this needs to change. And Richard was like, no, it doesn't.
Or he would say, prove it.
Or prove it, and
Right.
then you play a deck, and like we had a lot of degenerate decks. So this is a card that, you know, I was not able to change it with Richard, but then when I came here, I was like, out.
Yeah.
And that's why Winter Orb's no longer here.
That card is Armageddon Clock, not
Yeah.
Armageddon.
That's not Armageddon.
That's okay. So
That's okay. But
yeah.
Armageddon was one. So like Winter Orb I didn't like, but I did like Armageddon.
Okay, what was the difference?
I don't know. I don't know.
Isn't Armageddon worse?
It's
Yeah.
worse. I don't know. It was just
I
like,
think-
it's one and done. Like
Right.
Winter Orb just
It's-
lasts
Winter
around.
Orb just drags out the pain.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd say one of the things as a game designer, one of the things I like is I like a constantly evolving game board. So I'm more open to a sorcery creating an effect than an ongoing enchantment creating an
Sure.
effect. So Armageddon, you know, it was more expensive. It didn't come out right away, and you kind of won when you played Armageddon, but theoretically you might not. Yeah. And I always played, like, as you'll see in my spell book, it's red, white, weenie for a number of things. One, I like that. And in this limited play pool, everybody wanted to play blue. Well, like blue alphas was really strong, and I think it was really even stronger in the playtest.
It sounds like people
Yeah,
were
that-
very smart.
Yeah. So that just
Well,
sounds like
but
a
here's
great
the
play.
thing, like we didn't have the 4 of rule, and so everybody's playing blue, and I'm
And
like,
it was a limited card
right,
pool.
a limited card pool, and I'm like, if you want one of my blue cards, you got to throw in a lightning bolt. So I always played with a deck with 8 lightning bolts or 9 lightning bolts. So red,
Seems
white,
reasonable.
weenie with lightning bolts and Armageddon. It was pretty good.
I can see how playing with 8 lightning bolts would be strong.
Seems pretty good.
It was really good. That helped there. Yeah, Fork was one of those cards. I was looking through, I threw in. This is one more like not for its power, but I remember playing against Barry, one of the stories where like he's doing all of his blue, he was doing some of his blue tricks of card drawing, even though it's not that good. I'm like, I'll draw 3 cards too. And just how offended he was.
How dare your red deck draw cards?
How dare you do that? Right, and that was always so. There was a lot of just trying to surprise other people and trying to do some tricks, and it's a rare card, so you could play it and nobody else saw it before, kind of what you were going to do.
Yeah. So now another card you had on your list. You talked about playing white weenie decks, but you had Wrath of God on your list.
So Wrath of God. Well, I mean, it still clears the board. One of the things I put Wrath of God, and I love the art. So, I'm an art fan, but I won't say like I'm an art super fan. But and of course we played the original. I played Magic for almost 2 years before I actually saw a card with art on it.
Right.
Right. So
right.
like my perspective's a little warped. But when Alpha came out, Wrath of God was like my favorite piece when I just looked at it. Like I loved Quentin Hoover art, and that just so. From an art side, I love the card. This was a card where at first I hated. Like I probably played for a month. Said like this is a rare card, and I probably played Magic for my first month. Never knew the card existed. Back then, I was playing more red green, and then somebody played Wrath of God, and I was like, "Are you?
This is not
You're
fair.
Are you kidding me?" Like I went to Richard, like this is not fair.
I'm just playing some fair Magic.
This is
playing
not
my
fair. This is
creatures.
not fair. And then I get my next pool of cards, and I have a Wrath of God, and I'm like, well.
So when you
maybe
have it, it's
we'll
fine.
play. You know, Wrath of God, Armageddon kind of works together.
Just highlights how
Just
different
highlight with the weenie stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's just, and then this also, like from going, as a designer over 25 plus years with Magic, this is the evolution of like, we think Wrath of God is acceptable, we think it's not acceptable. There was a period where we thought Wrath of God was too good, and then we got rid of it. And then we also went back and forth. But now we love Wrath of God.
Yeah, we do. You know, we have, I think, ultimately decided that 4 is a little strong, so we've kind of moved it up to 5 a lot in our recent sets.
But there's always a little extra. It's not just like Wrath of God, but
Right.
costs
yeah,
5 mana.
Wrath Plus, of
Wrath
course.
Plus.
Wrath Plus. It's just a turn.
It's a good. It's a good effect.
Yeah.
It's a good effect. So it's a card that this is probably my most loved and most hated card of my set.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. By the way, I can, as a play designer now too, I can really appreciate the whole art angle that you talk about. Like when you play test, you don't see the art, and
You
a
don't
lot
see
of
the art,
times that
yes.
happens to us too, where we're testing sets and we don't see the art. And the other day we did like a practice draft. And like there was art on the card, and it really threw me off.
Right.
And then I was like, wait, hold on, let me look at this like awesome art, because like now I'm not just drafting anymore.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the art a lot more now.
Yeah.
And I always have, and the names too. Somebody will ask me a name of a card and be like, I don't know that, and then they'll show me the card. And I'm like,
Oh,
yeah.
that card.
I know
Yeah.
the plate test
Just
name.
start telling me what it does,
Does,
and
and
then
I'll
we'll
know
know
the
what
play
card you're
test.
talking
Yeah.
about.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I am
yeah.
always afraid because now I'm, I do coverage, and we're getting to the point where like I've now gone through the entire playtest cycle where a card's name has changed 4 or 5 times,
Right.
and I was just like, oh yeah, the removal spell,
Right.
that
Yeah,
one.
that one.
Okay.
That
Or I
card.
just remember the cost of the card. Oh, that's right. It had that late change to
Oh
it.
yeah, we nerfed that card.
Yeah, oh, I didn't realize. It used to be really good.
Yeah. I'm surprised
No,
there's
maybe. Who knows?
Who knows
Yeah.
what happens?
All right, let's
Let's-
go to how about Icy Manipulator? That was a different one you had on your list, and,
Yeah,
and a
Icy
favorite.
You know, one
yeah.
of the and part of this, I've always been more of a limited player. I think sort of the early days, while it was constructed because of the card pool, it felt a little bit.
semi-limited.
It was semi-limited, and then when we sort of, I don't even know who did, was it Richard who introduced the booster draft? But I remember my first booster draft.
Yeah, that was a
like it was
whole
still
lot.
a '92, and like I just
Yeah.
did the first booster draft, and I was like, "This is the only way I want to play."
It was the most fun way.
It
yeah.
was the most fun way. It's like this evolving game. It's like you really never know what you're going to see.
Yeah.
My God! And then I like Icy is like just one of the cards. It's another piece of art that I really love.
Right. That was my favorite piece of art.
It's
this set.
just
Was
a
it?
really good
Yep.
piece of art. It's
Yep.
a really strong card. And then from a designer, I thought like it's really strong, but I always felt it's fair. It's fair but strong.
I will
It's
tell
on
you.
it's walking on
It
the
is.
edge.
I mean,
it's
it is-
walking on the edge.
It is the only card on your list that is currently legal and standard.
Right.
Really?
It's in
Yeah.
Dominaria. It's in Dominaria.
Yeah.
I do
No other
remember.
card on my list is legal and standard.
I do remember
no,
this
none of them.
I
being
gotta
incredibly
change
unfair when my computer science teacher, this is when I'm in middle school, and I'm just getting into the game, and we're all playing with a bunch of crawl worms and just
Yeah.
whatever we open. We're all playing with whatever like 5 booster packs our
You are.
parents
Yes.
paid for our booster
Right.
packs. And then our computer science teacher, who makes an income, actually had a real deck, and he had the combo of Icy Manipulator and Royal Assassin.
can't
That's
beat
the first time where I was
Yeah.
just like,
That's so
yo,
unfair. That's
Mr. O, this is not fair. You cannot be doing this. Yeah.
Yep.
no.
All right, let's go to how about you told us about Lightning Bolt already, so we'll go to Rock of Cairigis. That one.
Yeah,
that
that's
one
another
stood out
one
to me.
that I just that just had good memories. It was the one flyer evasion. This was one I remember having all these conversations with Richard of like this was like, strictly better than Hill Giant, and it's another one that
Dies
because
to
of-
Hurricane.
because of Phantom Monster. It's like
Yep.
it really pissed off those blue players.
Yeah.
They're like, how can you have something this good?
Blue's supposed to be
It was
flying.
something blue. There's another one, and you know what? It's another one as I look past that I would say this is another like I like the different art style. Like that some of the art just. If I were picking my 10 favorite pieces of art in Alpha, not just my 10 favorite cards, I would say Icy Manipulator, Wrath of God, and Rock would be
Okay.
3 of those cards
Okay.
because I just really like it. So this one just really, I think you asked, like, we put 10 cards in a spell book, and I went up to 13. This was sort of one of my late entries because I just, it's brought back a lot of fond memories playing with it. I realize now, if I try to build my best alpha weenie deck when I can add another. If you can add another lightning bolt, why are you playing with a rock?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there was struggle for us to, fill out your deck to 60 cards. And this was kind of one of the filler cards.
Okay.
It was, it's a fun card. It's another one that I got to bring back.
Let's take a look at on a list of powerful cards. This might be the most powerful. Wheel of Fortune. Wheel of Fortune is still played a little bit in Vintage, particularly Storm kind of combo decks. But what did you use it for back then?
I just, for me, it was the weenie deck. It's just like, I'm going to play out all 7 of my cards. You're going to play out 3. We're going to wheel.
Yeah.
Bolt you 6 times.
Right.
And then play Wheel of
And then play
Fortune.
Wheel of Fortune.
Bolt you 3 more times.
Play Wheel of Fortune, just play things.
How else do you draw your lightning bolts?
Right. I mean, it's like, love card drawing, but you're not in blue. Let's go there. It's just, it's a little. I like a little chaos and fun and randomness in the play, and this was again very, very, very powerful card. But couple wheels, couple lions, bunch of lightning bolts, some Armageddons. It's all good.
Okay. So let's move on to Charlie's signature spellbook. Now, Charlie, what if he played white-red decks? What did you gravitate towards?
So as he mentioned, a lot of us were playing blue, and I was one of those.
Us.
But
Good man.
yes,
Good man.
I also
No bias.
I also
No.
I also liked a lot of white.
Okay.
Right, so the combination from the very beginning, obviously there are a lot of blue-white decks throughout the history of Magic, but from the very beginning, that was one of my favorites. And Balance, which is up on the screen right now, was definitely my favorite.
Okay.
I still remember the meeting that Richard had with all the playtesters when the first cards were out, and he came to talk to us and thanked us, and we chatted for a little while about Magic's future. And at the very end, he pulled out some cards, and he just said, "You all get one." And I saw a Balance in there, and I grabbed it immediately.
Okay.
Nice.
Balance is one of those cards that is fun for me because it's fair.
Right.
Yep, that's what everybody thinks when they think balance. I mean, it's in the name of the
It's
card.
perfectly
And
balanced.
the
It is the most
justice
perfectly
just
balanced
sounds-
card in all of Magic's history.
Yes, and the concept is clear, right? Like we're going to equalize creatures and lands and cards in hand.
Yep.
They don't mention that you could have artifacts or enchantments on the board, and it's like Mox, Black Lotus, Plains, Balance, and you haven't gone yet, and you get nothing, and.
Yeah. And there were no planeswalkers around then either.
Nope.
So now
Right.
you can
Now
put
you
in
can
with
do it with
planeswalkers.
planeswalkers.
Correct, and there are a lot of other things that it works well with.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. One of my favorite cards shortly after I started is a spiritual successor to this, which was Cataclysm, which lets you pick ones of things. And,
Right.
The idea was the same, and that card was just almost as horribly broken as Balance. Not quite. Not quite.
That was our
But
fixed version of
That was
Balance.
the fixed version.
Turns
yeah.
out you needed to fix it again.
Yes.
It's just
So
like it's-
so I still remember before the game came out, I was obviously playing with a Balance deck, and it took a little while before somebody in the real world figured it out. But once they did, the Balance decks started appearing and were very good.
Yeah.
So it was actually kind of fun to watch that blossom.
That,
Right.
Yeah. The next card on your list, I believe, is a
Jade statue?
artifact.
Yes.
There it is. Yes.
Right. So how does a Balance deck win?
It's a great question.
Jade statue.
Okay.
So in my original version of the Balance deck, I had 2 Jade statues. So in my 60 card deck, I had exactly 2 ways to damage my opponent and win the game.
That's just pure magic right there. Yeah.
That's yeah.
Right. So it's not a creature when you play Balance, so you don't have to worry about it, right? It's not a creature when your opponent wants to play Terror.
Right.
Right? Right. Or Wrath of God.
Early
or- yes.
terror didn't hit artifact creatures.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was a great
Right.
tool for eventually
Yep.
winning the game.
How do you kill that thing in alpha besides I guess,
Disenchant.
Disenchant.
Or you wait until you turn it into a creature, and then you play an instant that can kill it.
Like, I think your next card, maybe. That was
Sure.
a great segue.
All
Oh,
right.
yes, we did
Sorry,
it. We did it. Okay.
Right.
That's a good one. This is
One
a
on
good
my
list.
too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So once again, it's a fair card. I'm killing your creature really cheaply, but I'm giving you life, and
Yeah.
that balances it out. Balances it out.
I remember having when that first card, when we first saw it, we were like, Why do you have to give your opponent life?
Life,
That's,
right.
This is so bad.
Just
It's
take
so
that
bad.
part
Right.
off.
Right.
Yeah.
Downside.
So why do you give your opponent life?
So my my favorite story ever was when we had original Mirage design, and we got into a league where we allowed ourselves just a few rares, some uncommons, and a lot of commons. And I played the deck with a Regrowth, a Time Twister, some Swords to Plowshares, and so it was green, white, blue, and my only creatures were 3 Manowar elves.
Okay.
So the idea behind the thing was a lot of countering, a lot of Wrath of God, that kind of stuff, and I would Swords to Plowshares as many of your creatures
Removing
as I
them from the
could,
game.
and then Time Twister.
Yeah.
And then repeat that process, and your life would be at like 50 or 60 or 70, and then my elves would start to go in.
Yeah.
I'll attack you with an elf,
Either you
down
won
to
with-
51. I'll attack you with 2 elves, down to 49.
Wow.
Some
somebody
say
who-
Charlie's still playing that game to this day.
Yeah, wow. I mean, we're control players too, but man, this is wild.
That's dedication.
Winning with 3 Llanowar elves.
That
is wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Next on your list was something a little darker.
Right. So Bill was referring to the fact that during the playtest there weren't. It was a very limited card pool, right? So one of the things I wanted to try out was I wanted to try a different deck other than blue-white. I went back. Don't worry.
Good.
I wanted to try a deck full of plagues and dark rituals and drain lives and things along those lines. And so I started trading for dark rituals. Now, this is a limited card pool, and if I remember right, during that iteration, there were exactly 20 dark rituals in existence, right? So trading for dark rituals at first was easy because people were like, yeah, that's a pretty good card, but as long as I gave them a pretty good card. But pretty soon, there were, it started to get around. Charlie's trading for dark rituals. What's he doing with all those dark rituals? And every time I tried to trade for a dark ritual, it got a little bit harder to trade for a dark ritual. And near the end, it was like I got to like 11, and like there were 3 people with some dark rituals. They're like, I'm not trading with you. Like, I'll give you all this stuff. Like, I'm not trading with you. Right?
Clearly,
Like,
you know something I don't.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So it brought a concept of economics into the whole game of Magic and the meta game of Magic. And that's why I put this card on the list, is because it was a fun card and I like the card, but the economic lessons that we learned from limited card pools.
I'll trade you my dark ritual as long as you throw in a
Lightning bolt, yes. You were one of the people I believe I actually traded a dark ritual for. Yes.
Give me a lightning
Got a
bolt. I'll
lightning
take
bolt.
that.
I mean,
Deal.
both trading for incredibly powerful 1-mana spells.
Right.
So.
Yes.
Next on your list is, again, one of my favorite spells too.
Yeah, right.
But,
So we finally got into the blue portion.
thank goodness.
This was definitely the card that I liked the most. And when your opponent has a plan and you get to disrupt your plan, that was kind of the play style I liked.
Yeah.
And the counterspell is one of the most skill-intensive things. It's like you have to know what's to counterspell, what not to counterspell. You have to know when to save 2 blue mana. And just later on, when you're known as a blue player and a counterspell player, you could just leave 2 blue mana untapped, and it makes your opponents think.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So.
It's that quaking fear that we all enjoy.
Right.
It's like, God, which threat do I want to get countered? You know,
Yeah.
it's like you got to play the worst one because they definitely have it.
The answer is all of them. All of them want it.
Well, that's the goal. But in a limited card pool,
Right.
I was only able to get so many counter spells because there were other blue players. They
Right.
valued counter spells a
Yeah.
lot too,
Yeah.
right? So.
They were common.
Yep.
Yeah.
Speaking of counter spells, we're going to jump forward in time a little bit for the next one. Force of Will.
Right. So very early on, the Magic environment was obviously very degenerate. Before the 4-card limits, there were turn 1 kills. There were kills
8
before.
lightning bolts.
Right. There were kills before you could even start playing. Right. Your opponent
And
just
Channel
played turn
Fireball.
1 and Channel Fireball and won the game. Right. So we wanted to be able to give people an answer, but we actually wanted it to be fair. And as you can tell, 5 mana for a counterspell just by itself is not really going to be a staple of any quality deck, because you're not going to constantly save 5 mana in order to be able to counterspell. But so we gave the out of being able to play it for free, and you just have to pay something, right?
Yeah.
And that the important thing is I get to pay something. So if you use all 7 of your cards to try and immediately on turn 1 set up this win, and I'm doing this, all of a sudden I'm in great shape, and it really helped balance the immediate turn kills.
Yeah.
do believe that the better option later on was abandon restricted lists and 4-card
Right.
limits, and so that was a much better response. But this was actually a very fun and interesting card that's seen play throughout Magic's history, which is nice.
And not a lot of people know. Well, some number of people know, but not everybody knows that this was part of a 5-card cycle. Actually, each color got one.
Yes.
The others were less powerful.
Yeah, the red one was pretty good.
The red
Fire
one was
Blast.
pretty good. The black one was pretty good too.
Healing Salve was part of a 5-card cycle.
Yes.
Who was the sucker trading for the healing salve?
That was when we opened the beta pack last week. It was like, oh, I opened a boon, everyone. And I put down healing. It was like, oh.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, wrong one.
So in the original playtest group, I actually remember because I was one of the few people who were trading for white cards, and I only wanted certain white cards, the ones that would fit into the more the more controlling decks. So
Yeah.
Bill wanted the white weenies, and I wanted those, and there were very few other people who were actually playing white, except this one person who basically, his name was Chris. He would basically trade any other color for your white stuff. Right, so he just amassed a whole bunch of white cards because that was his favorite color.
Yep. Next up on your list, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, I'm thinking of the boons, right? Wasn't Ancestral Memories?
Yeah, Ancestral Memories. Yeah,
When we first
Ancestral
started,
Recall.
Ancestral Recall was common.
yeah,
So
it was a
20 of
common.
them floated. Because all the
Yes.
boons were originally common.
All of them were
thank
common.
you
And while it wasn't changed, like it was moved
Oh,
to...
it's blowing my
It
mind.
was moved to...
Yes, thank you
Well,
for
think
reminding
it was
me.
right. There was a cycle. Every color got something. 1 mana, you got 3 things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
You
3
got
life.
Three life.
cards,
It's
right.
like
I
3
mean, and
cards.
then
healing
the
salve is
last
so
moment,
versatile.
we
You
just-
can prevent 3
It
damage
got,
too.
Yeah.
It got moved to rare. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was-
And
they
that
were all-
evened
they
things
were
out.
all- But
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
we first started, it was a
Clean
Yes.
cycle.
It was a
Clean
clean cycle.
Yeah, that's
That reminds me of the story. Playing a lot of Ancestral Recalls.
Of course.
Obviously, you're going to get to a point where you tap on your turn. You tap an island and you play an Ancestral Recall and you draw 3 cards,
Yep.
right?
And
And then I would reach for my island, and my friend who knew the cycle by now, who knew the pattern by now, responded to me, and I'll play another Ancestral Recall. He would announce what I was going to do before I even did it, because there were a lot of Ancestral Recalls
Recalls back
out.
there.
I wonder
Right.
why.
Yes.
Yeah.
It would've-
Common ancestral recall. I didn't know that actually.
Thanks for reminding me, Bill.
No, I remember that
Yeah.
cycle.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you think about it, the
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
4.
That,
still
I think, yeah, of those cards, the only one that we've actually made a better version of is the healing salve.
Yeah.
We have one
Correct.
in Dominaria.
We have one in Dominaria that's
Yeah.
better. The rest of them are
Nope,
yeah.
can't really improve on those.
no.
No.
There's
some
ones
giant
that are,
growths.
some giant growths that are arguably close,
Right.
but yeah. All right, let's move on to your next broken card on your
Yeah, your
cycle.
list is just all just
Tons of-
incredible
Yeah.
power.
He's got some non-broken ones after
Yeah,
that.
okay.
Yeah,
But,
but he
let's go
he-
past this one. This is
93
not.
and on.
Let's go to Lion's Eye Diamond. Actually.
Okay.
So another
Let's-
ridiculous
yeah,
card.
this one's not broken.
Oh, no, not at all, right?
Not-
You have to
this
discard your
one's
hands.
broken. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Lion's Eye Diamond.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is a fun
broad.
story. We'll talk more about the Magic through the ages later, but one of the interesting things here is early on I learned the lesson that Richard taught us that not every rare has to be great, right? And obviously we had learned the lesson the Black Lotus was great right away, and we loved it. And so I took it as a challenge. Can we create a card that's actually not very good? That's like Black Lotus. And so the original design, by the way, was colorless mana, not colored mana.
Okay.
And we succeeded in making a bad card until the 6th edition rules came out and changed how this worked.
So what?
Yeah, this was
what
not a
the
very
change?
good card when it first came out.
Yeah. What was the change?
It was, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was about the timing. I included this on my list mainly because I wanted to say the cards can change pretty a large amount based upon how the rules work and about how the
this-
metagame goes.
Right, because this is a Mirage card, and we just tried with a few slots when we were on the design team of like,
Right.
can we just do cards that like tease people, like we don't think that they're very good. And when this first came out, it didn't really go anywhere. but then it was rediscovered. And
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I remember there was a
Surprising.
magazine at the time that I think listed this as the worst card in Mirage.
Right.
Oh, in the
Right.
yeah.
Well,
I think yeah, it was
Yes.
one of the magazines. There used to be magazines.
Yes.
about Magic the Gathering.
Oh, yeah.
Kids.
They're made out of paper.
They
They're made in
printed
paper.
them. You could
you
buy
had-
them in
That is what
bookstores.
You gotta
that
go
is
to
what
the
got
store
me
and buy
into
one.
competitive Magic. Like when I first picked up a sideboard magazine,
Yeah.
I was like, oh my goodness,
Right.
who is this Kai guy? Why is he winning everything?
Everything.
You
Yep.
know?
Yes.
And then I was like, okay, maybe I want to like get into competitive Magic. That's actually how I started too.
That was actually, I've got a couple cards on my signature spell book that came from, I saw one of those magazines.
Right.
It had 4 different deck lists in it. One of them was a browse post deck, and I went from there. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, but
Is this the best card in Mirage?
it might be that this. I mean, that's the thing. If you look at this card, it looks bad,
Yeah,
right?
yes.
It does.
You have to find a way to do something crazy with this, and people eventually figured it out. It's like,
Right.
hey, you play a
It's
bunch
a
of
puzzle.
spells,
Right.
you put
Yep.
a draw 7 or something on the stack,
Stack,
then you
and then
sack
you
it
do-
for mana,
Right.
and
Right.
now you can do crazy
Yeah.
things.
Right.
It is probably the best card now from Mirage that's still seeing play in older formats.
And those are actually really fun cards to make. The cards that don't
Yeah,
look
there's
that
just
good,
kind of a-
but actually people find a use for.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, like imagine Lantern of
Puzzle
Insight,
cards.
right? That card just wasn't.
Oh, it was
just
terrible. Yeah.
The bargain bin for forever, and
Yeah.
then somebody managed to put together a bunch of these ridiculous artifacts together and make a deck out of it. And
I mean,
that's a
that
real
card
thing.
is still objectively terrible.
Oh yeah.
It just happens to fit into
Right.
this
Yes.
one deck. That is,
Yeah.
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 Now let's move on to a card that is universally playable all over the place. Manowar, the
Yes.
precursor for a lot of cards that we've printed over the years.
Right. So one of the things that the blue decks didn't have a whole lot of answers for was, they snuck something on the table. So my favorite use of Manowar was waiting until I had a counterspell and then bouncing the thing that was threatening me.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah,
that
we
was
had events.
yeah.
This makes me think of remember Undo.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Oh,
the-
double unsummon?
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
when we first proposed Undo, one of the play designers added a mana to it, and I was so against them adding a mana to it that I called it Undo-Do for a while. And now I go back and I'm like, why didn't you add 2 mana to it?
Exactly. Yes.
For those who don't know, it's a 3 mana
Mana.
spell
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
bounces 2 creatures.
It was
Uh,
because Unsummon was
wow.
so terrible that
Yeah.
it was like
Clearly just
you
2 of them.
should get 2.
Yeah.
And then they were like, no, 1 UU. I'm
Right.
like, no.
Right. Just like all
No.
players, we went through our own evolution from
Period of
pretty
discovery.
bad players to actually being good players.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember one of my
mine was
original
good.
pieces of feedback to Richard is with Black Lotuses and Moxes and Ancestral Recalls, I made sure to point out that the most broken cards were the Circles of Protection. Right?
Yeah,
I'd only
there
been
was
playing
lot
a
of-
couple of weeks, and it was obviously very frustrating.
Right.
And there's a gem of truth in there from a design point of view. It's like you
Right.
don't want to frustrate your players.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Right.
obviously, I did not correctly identify the most powerful card in this set.
Yeah. So
All right.
he's just drawing cards. Whatever. What can they be?
Yep.
You know?
Your last card is another blue
Yeah.
bounce spell.
Right.
Capsize.
Right. So the nice thing
Speaking
about
of frustrating cards.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. The nice thing about Capsize is it handled anything. Right.
Right.
Artifacts, enchantments, and later on in the game, 10 hours later, when you have 15 or 20 mana, you can just start reducing your opponent's board. And when your opponent has nothing, then you don't have to worry at all.
Yeah.
And, like that was the style of deck that I would like
Then
to
you
play.
can win with 50 attacks from Manowar.
Or else,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
yes. Right, so I remember playing Capsize and then playing Capsize again and then playing Capsize again on the same turns.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm
that
just
was-
gonna say, based on your list,
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna guess that you didn't have a lot of friends during because I'm looking here. I'm playing counterspells, forces,
Yeah.
swords to plowshares, and capsize.
Yeah.
It was sometimes hard to find opponents to test against. Yes.
Say, no, I'm not
No,
playing.
I'm
against that."
good. I'm
Yeah.
good. Maybe later. All right.
That's why we went with the red-white speed deck.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
People can get lots of games in against
Yeah.
Bill,
He
too.
had to resolve Armageddon.
counter my first lightning bolt, have out the second lightning bolt.
Yeah.
Third, fourth, fifth, maybe.
Yeah, you sneak into Savannah lines, you're good. Turn
Yeah.
one.
Turn
Right.
Turn one's Van Lines
Yeah.
go.
just to join in, Paul and I put together our own lists as well. We're not going to spend as much time as we did on Bill and Charlie. Our stories are far less interesting and involve far fewer common ancestral recalls. We did put together our own list. So why don't we take a look at Paul's list? And Paul, you can tell us about all these blue cards.
Yeah, well, Cryptic Command, one of the best blue spells ever. This card just gives you so much flexibility. And that's, also the time where I actually wanted Magic. So, I mean, maybe that coincides because I just knew to put this in my deck.
That makes sense.
Yeah, Mirari's Wake was one of the first times where I just played this deck that I just felt like I was just doing so much more powerful things than my opponent. You play Mirari's Wake, you untap, so hard to lose. It just basically gave you all the resources.
And Mirari's Wake was basically a blue spell.
Yeah, it was in the classic Bant Mirari's Wake control deck. Moving on, Spiritmonger was the first creature I looked at, and I was like, oh my god, what is this? It doesn't make sense. It's just completely overstated. How can they make this card?
Yeah.
And so I just, and that was actually the first Friday Night Magic that I won with. It was a deck with a bunch of birds, elves, and Spiritmongers, and I just played turn 3 Spiritmonger a bunch, and people were like, yeah, okay, I'm not winning. and then just a bunch of sweet blue card draw effects, and of course Vesuvian Shapeshifter, because I played a lot of the mono blue morph Vesuvian Shapeshifter Brine Elemental Pickles luck deck, which basically made it so my opponents wouldn't untap. And when I played that deck, I also did not have a lot of friends.
Right.
Didn't you win a GP with that deck?
I did. I decided to add my own twist to it by adding white and Wrath of God. Turns out that's not really a great strategy when you're playing a bunch of morphs in your deck. I ended up boarding out Wrath in almost all of my matchups. But,
I distinctly remember after you won that GP, putting that deck together on Magic Online and being really excited about it, and then playing it and being shocked because it was so bad. I could not figure out. I just, for the longest time, I must not be very good at Magic because he won a GP with this deck. Yeah. It's clearly good.
And that's the thing. When I was playing that tournament, I didn't even realize I was in top 8 contention because I lost every game 1 in brutal fashion, sideboarded, and then won these really long drawn-out games. Yeah. But I always won 2-1, 2-1, 2-1. And then at the end of it, I was just like, oh my god, if I win this last round, I'm going to top 8.
Yeah.
And then, basically I won the tournament, and then all my friends afterwards is like, Paul, this deck is terrible. How did you win? I'm like, I don't know, man. I drew well after sideboard, I guess. I took out all the white cards.
All right, let's look at my signature spellbook real quick. You'll notice a pattern here. These are all blue cards, including Thawing Glaciers, which is technically a blue card.
Bill, you're outnumbered.
Yep.
Yeah.
So as I was saying before, the Browse Post deck, which was a Browse Keldrin Outpost deck, had Thawing Glaciers in it as well. I think the list I got was from John Finkel playing some tournament. Again, it was in that magazine.
So it's a good person to get a list from.
Yeah, but it had 4 Force of Will, it had 4 Wrath of God, Swords of Plowshares, all the good stuff.
I like how you managed to put 2 Muldrifters in your top 8.
I did put 2 Muldrifters in my top 8. Muldrifter is the best creature of all time, and I will fight you. Cruel Ultimatum, I still to this day play Cruel Ultimatum in Modern.
Yeah, that's probably a mistake, but
it's not. The deck is
so
good.
It's not?
Honestly, my record on Magic Online with the deck is fairly good.
Well, you're playing a bunch of good Grixis cards, and then sure, I mean, to be fair, I've also played my fair share of Cruel Control, and it's a lot of fun, especially when you get back a Snapcaster Mage.
It's amazing.
Then play Snapcaster Mage, Cruel Ultimatum.
So the last time I played a constructed FNM, I played Modern, and I played my Cruel Control deck.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, I had a crowd gathered around me in the 4th round, and I could hear people whispering, "Is this that Cruel Ultimatum deck? Is this that?" Because
there is no Cruel Ultimatum deck.
There was that night. I was playing against in the 2nd round. I went to time with a Jund player, and we had played obviously super long games. So I had a ton of mana in play. I was playing Coalition Relic, so I had floated mana, and he was at something like 12 life or something like that. And so end of turn, I flash in a Vendilion Click on his turn, make myself cycle a card, untap, attack him, Cruel Ultimatum him, draw into another Cruel Ultimatum, which I can cast and Cruel Ultimatum him. And so the whole FNM goes wild, and so that's why. Anyway, I will never.
That's why it's on your list.
That's why it's on my list.
Only 2 ultimatums in 1 turn.
In 1 turn, yeah. It was. I stopped playing Magic after that.
Retired.
Yes.
Yeah.
Retired. Okay, enough with the memories. Let's talk about now. So let's talk about the core set. So we've got some cards that have been previewed this week, and then we'll talk a little bit about core set through history. But let's bring up some of the cards that have already been previewed this week. If you haven't been paying attention, this will be a nice preview for you. If you have been paying attention, well, then these will be a nice little refresher. Plus, we've got the non-promo version of Death Baron. So if you're at Grand Prix Vegas this weekend, the convention promo is a Death Baron. If you play in an event, you can get a Death Baron. But it is also a card just in M19. And so we have the regular version of that as well. So there it is right there. So that is the same art that it was printed with originally. The promo art's different, and it's kind of full art and very cool looking. But Death Baron is definitely in the set. We've also got a new Planeswalker in M19, Vivian Reed. So, Bill, you were telling me a little bit about Vivian before and how there was a fork in the road of whether she'd see play past M19.
Yeah, so we decided, in the past, we've sort of used our core sets to bring back our old Planeswalkers and connect people with sort of our Magic's past. And Vivian's sort of one of our steps forward where we're going to introduce a Planeswalker, one that we have grand plans for over the next couple of years. Yes. So this is Vivian's debut. But look for more exciting things over the next couple of
This
sets.
is not a one and done.
This is not a one and done. No,
She's not getting the Tybalt treatment.
She's not. No, we're committed to Vivian.
She also has an invocation, which was shown off earlier this week, and it's a good way to cheat a large creature into play from your library. And that kind of the art on this one's really cool because it shows kind of what Vivian's powers are all about. Where I'm not going to give too much away from her story because there's stuff to come. But basically, she has the ability to shoot the kind of the spirits of these deceased animals from her homeworld to bring them into battle through her weapons. Next up, we've got Patient Rebuilding. So Patient Rebuilding. So there was a lot of talk about M19. Rumors in the community about it being a villain set, and none of those rumors went away when we showed the key art, and the key art was Nicole Bolas. It is not, in fact, a villain set. However, like other core sets, it's got kind of a potpourri of different storylines, and you'll see reprints like Death Baron that have nothing to do with the story that is told alongside it. But it's also got some cards like Patient Rebuilding that do kind of tell a little bit about the story of Nicole Bolas. Next card is Totally Lost, which tells the best story in all of the set. Not much to say about Fibblethip here. He's kind of become a community favorite. I will say this, he will be back. We will see him at least in art in the future. Next up is just Paul's favorite card. I'm going to say it's Paul's favorite card in M19.
It truly is. I mean, I remember, one of the first things you do when you kind of enter play design is they're like, all right, go through all the sets in the future and point out some things that interest you and whatever. And I remember just stopping at this card and be like, wait, what?
Yeah, what?
10/10 for 5 mana? This thing's crazy. Yeah, Gigantosaurus. I mean, even with the name, this thing is just perfect. I think this might be. Is this one of the first vanilla rares we've done in a while?
Probably
because
not.
It's just stats.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean,
Didn't we do a 210 years ago?
Maybe I'm not sure, but
he said in a while.
Yeah.
So it's been a while.
It's been a while. We might have done some back in the
we've
day.
We've definitely done some vanilla. I mean, Ismaru was kind of the
legendary. Don't count.
Legendary. But yeah, we've done. None come to mind.
Right. I just want to find a way to give this thing trample and just give people the beatdowns. Got my Llanowar Elf, Steel Leaf Champion, and Gigantosaurus ready, and just get ready to bash some people's heads in, or just first pick this in draft and just be like, all right,
I'm
mono
green.
I'm green.
I have been able to draft this once in testing.
Best
it was
of
a lot
luck.
of fun. It was a lot of fun.
Next up, we had some promos that we showed off this week. So promos are cards, again, if you don't know, that you can get by playing in events, usually at your local store. So Militia Bugler, Demon of Catastrophes, Gutter Snipe, Desecrated Tomb, Reliquary Tower, and Murder are kind of the promos that are associated with this set. Militia Bugler is one you can get at F&M. Demon of Catastrophes, if I'm remembering correctly, is the game or the store championship promo. I might be saying that wrong. Gutter Snipe you can get for. Oh, I completely forgot what that one's from. Let's go with Reliquary Tower, one I remember. Reliquary Tower you can get for joining in Open House, and then Murder is an F&M promo. But one question we've been getting a lot is about the buy-a-box promo. So let's look at Nexus of Fate. Bill, what? Obviously, this is R&D is your purview. So what are the goals of the buy-a-box promotion?
So we wanted to give stores, the people who run our OP, some loving. Mm-hmm. So by adding the buy a box, we're creating an incentive for players to start purchasing their Magic cards through our OP system and our OP stores. Mm-hmm. So that was one. So that was one of the goals. And then we wanted to make this card meaningful. Right now, we sort of we're trying to tread the line. We didn't want to make this like this uber chase card that people had to get, but we also didn't want to give them something that didn't matter. And I know that there's people in the community are worried that we may miss. Mm-hmm. It's like, I think with all good design, you've got to tread close to the line. Mm-hmm. So that's why people like Paul. So don't blame me, blame him.
Well, yeah. I mean, right. I mean, it is interesting because if the card is like a total miss and it doesn't look exciting at all, then why even have it? So
correct.
It has to be at that point where it's like, everybody, we all look at those cards and we're like, hey, is this card cool?
Right.
Like, if it's cool, that's one thing. Then the next thing is this gonna like severely impact standard? It's like, well, we're not sure, and then we put it on
we test.
Yeah, we test, and it's like we're not gonna have Jace Vryn's Prodigy as this card.
Right. Correct. Right. I think with everything, with good design and with our good playtest, we're one step away from going off the edge. Like that's where we want to be all the time, and that's where I think the buy box promo is. So I think it's exciting. Our players love it. It's great. It's great for OP.
Yeah. Now the last thing we're going to do before we get to questions is show off some art that you haven't seen yet. But before we get to that, we're just going to take a real quick trip down memory lane about the ways core sets have changed.
Okay.
Since you guys were testing alpha. Yeah. So the first change, if you want to be honest, the first change was beta, which had cards that alpha did not. Right. But the first real change, then white border. So unlimited was kind of the first big change to the core set. It wasn't world shifting, but we did make cards white bordered for a while. We don't do that anymore.
No, they look terrible. No.
Yeah. We want our cards to look as good as possible.
Right. I inherited white border.
Yeah.
Not on me.
Blame someone else. Next, revised. So shortly after that, revised was the first set to add or remove cards from the core set. Alpha, beta, and unlimited. Beta had cards that alpha didn't, but that was not on purpose.
Right.
Revised shifted the card pool a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Like one of the things, I don't know if people know, when Ice Age was in design, that set was originally designed to, when it came out, it wouldn't be it would replace. Like
that was the original.
The idea was that all other Magic cards would go away, and that set would just be the only set we played. Now, obviously, we didn't get there, but sort of revised was that rethinking of cards are going to be here forever. We're not going to get rid of them. How do we do a blend and mix?
How do we get the best of both worlds?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it wasn't quite right, but that's kind of how revised came around.
Okay.
And then, of course, Ice Age never, well, it was originally designed. That's why there were so many original reprints from, there was a lot more when it first went through because it was supposed to just, players would just retire. In fact, we were debating with Ice Age if Magic sets would just have new backs all
Card
the time.
decks.
Yeah.
Every time. So Ice Age would have an Ice Age card back, and then people would play that. And obviously,
Luckily, Richard made the right choice.
Thankfully, yeah.
we
Thankfully,
just-
we did not do that.
there's just nobody knew what, like in 1992,
Yeah,
nobody
we
knew
knew
what
what
was
was gonna
going
happen.
on.
Yeah.
So do we assume every card that was cut from from Alpha and Beta were just the cards you guys didn't like? Is that what happened, or?
No,
Nah.
it wasn't quite like that.
Okay.
No.
No.
A few of them, yes.
Right, yeah.
Well, you weren't. Were you here with Revise? So I was freelance designer with Mirage. So that's
He
not
wasn't
really
yet working on
Or
the company. I was here at the very final part, but I wasn't one of the people who was choosing.
Yeah, I joined
I
right
see.
around Homelands.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay, so we can blame you for that one.
Well, here's my Homelands thing. So I'm coming up for my interview, and they send me a card file that we're going to talk about. So I'm on and of course, back then I have a paper cutout, and I mark it up, which was my style for a long time, in red. Like, here are all the changes I'm going to make. And we go in, I have the interview on Friday, and they sit me down. These are people that I work with in Philadelphia, and they're like, we got to work on the set this weekend because we're going to final typeset on Monday. And I'm like, oh, you don't want to? I'm like, well, here are the 200 changes that I would make, but we're not going to test them. So. Yeah, it's a little more structured.
We got a slightly different system now.
Yes,
Slightly
it's a
different.
little
Yeah.
structured
Yes,
now.
we do.
Yes,
We
yes.
got a weekend to make the final touches.
We have the final. Oh, yes. There's a lot of.
When Homelands were first being created, there were zero people whose job was to playtest cards in Magic.
Okay.
So-
Okay.
Hey, we used
We
to
have
do-
a few more than
There's
that.
We have
Right.
a lot more, and
Yeah.
they're pretty darn good at it.
Right. We used to go like the day before we would send the final files out, and we would swap art on like 45 cards. We'd be like, well, the art just came in. That's why you wonder, like, why are there ostriches running up a mountain? It was because like it was the last day and the art came in the day before. We're like, what are we going to do with this art?
Again, our
It's like-
process is significantly better now.
Yes, they
It's
are.
like,
It is.
it's like
It's
school
like-
projects due tomorrow.
It is due tomorrow. It was like, well, this, if we put this one here, and then at the end, we're like, oh, we slipped around 45. And then the editor would come in the next day and we're like, I was up all night adjusting the artist credits.
Yeah.
All right.
the way
The next big change that didn't involve swapping art was the 6th edition
Sixth
rules
edition.
change.
Well, you
So
went
you
right
guys.
past- You went past 5th edition with our
Yeah.
like 700 card set or something.
Yeah, we're just
That
gonna
was an
forget-
experiment
we're
that
gonna-
didn't
we're
work.
gonna
But
forget 5th edition existed.
That's why we skipped it.
No,
Yeah.
we tried that, so
Yeah.
not everything worked.
So 6th edition, you were telling me that 6th edition came out in 1999. You were
Correct.
telling me that you were working on this rules change in like 1995?
96.
96,
So in
yes.
96, 97 is when we did it. 96 we started discussing like we got to do something about the Magic rules.
Right.
Yeah.
The rules are just so hard to understand.
Yeah.
Back
Right,
then.
and for for people who play Magic Online today,
Right.
the rules changes were 6th edition were because we'd imagined that we wanted something like Magic Online, and we wanted rules that would work.
Yeah.
So we spent about a year and a half.
And
But
that the
there was-
average player could understand.
Right.
Yeah, that could be processed, right? That we
Right.
had the rules.
They were logical.
Yes, all of R&D got together for the rules committees, and there was a lot of yelling and screaming. And then with our players. So yeah, this was just something that people could actually, the goal of the game was, I know the rules, I can read my game piece, I can figure out what's happening. And that was the goal of 6th edition.
Yeah.
And I think 6th edition got it a lot more right than wrong.
It got it pretty close. I
It
mean,
got
we
it pretty
haven't
close.
we haven't had
We
an
had
update
tweaks.
that big. since
No,
Correct.
just
then.
some tweaks,
Yeah.
some things to make the game a little more accessible.
Yeah.
That was the best thing.
I want to make sure we get to questions before we run out of time.
8th edition, right?
Yes,
That's the
so
next big
we're just
change.
going to run through these last couple changes real quick.
Mm-hmm.
8th edition border change. It just we updated the look of Magic.
Right, that was sort of that step one.
Yep.
We also, I think 8th edition was the last time that we really debated whether or not we should change the card backs.
Okay.
For like the first 10 years, every year we'd have a major debate on whether or not we should change the card backs. And, by not changing like by the time we got to 8th edition, we were just like, forget it guys, like we can't change. But we wanted to make the cards look a little bit more modern, sweet, and then, yeah, this was what, I mean, we didn't know at the time this would be the start of modern.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there was no plans at that. And then
Yeah, and the next big
edition?
change was actually M10 where that was where we started incorporating new cards
Yep.
into core sets.
And Black Border.
And
Back-
yeah, I think
back
Black
to
Border
black.
happened before that.
Did we get rid of?
Eh,
No, I think
No,
8th
it was
edition
back-
was
it was
white.
back to black.
8th edition, yeah.
Right, one of the
okay,
things
okay.
that it was another big debate, and we just said, you know what, white border is ugly, black
just-
border
yeah.
is beautiful.
People just don't
Right.
like.
People don't want it.
Yeah.
Let's give people what they want. And 10th edition was really rethinking the core set of let's go back and just let's give people what they want.
Yep.
Right.
And then there was a period where we had no core sets. Not a very long period.
That yes.
Yes. But now
But it's
Now we're
it's back.
Now it's
That's
back.
back. So that's Core 2019 is the return of the core set. The last time we had one was Magic Origins.
Yeah.
Yes, which wasn't
It's-
named like a core set, but was
a core set.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's every bit as good as Origins.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is.
It's good stuff.
Now, again, I want to get to questions, and we're running out of time, but I also want to get to art previews. So we have, 5 art previews, 6 art previews to show you. So these are all cards we have not previewed the name.
So you
We have
can
not
guess what
previewed
the
it.
cards
You
do,
can take a guess. But this is some art we've got coming up. These cards will be shown next week. So take a look.
All right.
Ooh,
Got some generic burn spell.
generic burn.
Or it
This
could be a
card's
big
not-
dragon.
This card's actually really good. I'm not going to say anymore.
Yeah.
So this is
Nice
a satyr.
That looks like okay.
Yep. It does cool things as well.
The awesome part is I don't actually know what some of these cards are
cards
So
based
you're
on
not
the art.
accidentally
Right.
going to see
You've
Because
played
I-
with these cards, but
Yeah.
you don't know. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
You haven't seen the art.
There are going to be Leonin in M19.
Ooh,
You heard it here
some
first.
cat tribal maybe. We'll see.
And then this is another bolus.
Is that just a random
story
dinosaur, or
card.
is
That is
No, that's not a
not
dinosaur.
a random anybody. That is Nicol Bolas doing
Bolas.
something powerful.
Yeah.
And then this one is actually worth noting because this art is done by Elena Danner, and she's going to be on the show on June 28th, and she will talk a little bit about her process for this card and the other cards in M19 that she has art for.
That card looks really awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 yeah, she did a fantastic job on that. Finally, this is what do we
Ooh.
decided this was Tezzard's brother.
First cousin.
It
First
just
cousin.
looks like a random
Removed.
It's just an artificer of some sort. I
Some
think.
kind.
Yeah.
So this will actually be our preview card on next week's weekly MTG. So next week we will show you what this card may or may not be related to Tezzeret. We don't know. Might do.
Might do.
Yeah. That's just a new art for Island.
Yeah, that's
that's
just.
it's a really sick island.
Okay, so finally, let's get to a couple questions that we got from some readers. So here's a softball to start. What makes, and they used Twitter names, but we'll just use their real names. What makes Andrew Brown and Melissa Tora such awesome colleagues? This was by far the nicest question I got.
Yeah, there's some of our new blood in play design. I think, like, for me, they're really inquisitive. I mean, they're really good players. They're far better players than I am, but they're open and they absorb everything and they produce some really great material. So, you know, Dominaria just. If you love Dominaria, you love Andrew and Melissa.
Yeah. You know, part of I think just working with all the people in play design is that, like, you know, oftentimes when I play competitively, you know, you have a lot of people who are kind of stubborn. You know, they've learned how to play their Magic, but here everybody's super open.
Team oriented.
the
You got to be
team-oriented.
open, but you also have to debate. Like it's like
Right,
you can't
right.
just be like, oh, I love anything you do and I agree with you. Like there's this. Like,
Yeah, but
there's
it's like
this it's
respectful.
this balance, right?
You can respectfully disagree, and then you can have
Yes.
good conversation.
Patience and
you know,
then move everything forward.
and you know,
so
a lot of these, everybody here were top tier Magic players.
there's
But you know, it's just like the fact that you know, we can all just work together for this one goal.
and
of making
inquisitive,
sure we,
right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
being inquisitive. I think it's the
Right.
number. If you're inquisitive, you can work together because
Yeah.
it's about It's not about being right. It's about finding the right answer.
Right.
And they're on the team to do that. So it's really it's fun. It's a good group.
And I get to feel a little younger every time I hang out with Andrew
That's
Brown.
true. How about
That's my thing.
how about,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just like
Who are these kids? What are
I
they
started
doing?
playing Magic in '92, and they were like, "I wasn't born to '95." I'm like, "Screw you."
Oh, that's good.
All right, Paul, what do we got next?
All right, here we go. We got. I've wondered this for years at this point, and I guess for Mr. Catmandu, which I think might be referring to you, Charlie, why is the expansion symbol still taking up precious real estate on the type bar line when it could say sit at the bottom of the card among the legal text like Duel Masters?
Yeah. So I think that that's just an artifice of the fact that early on the expansion symbol was in its place, and one of the things you want to do is you want to make sure that you match people's expectations. So if we make a change, we have to know that not only is the change better, but it's significantly enough better that it's worth making a change in the first place. And in the end, we decided that it wasn't worth that much to change it.
I think it was with 4th edition, we experimented with moving the casting cost to the other side of the card.
Yeah,
And then we just said,
it's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
We did that. We
Even
did
if
something
it-
weird with Future Sight,
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was on the
Yeah,
left, like
just
vertical.
and we just that was Mark
not
bringing
worth
back what we did with 4th edition.
Yeah, that was the
okay.
experiment, but
Yeah.
now we're
Yeah.
sticking to the top
Correct.
right.
Yeah.
All right, and now we have another question. This is for both of you. What is the biggest design feature or lesson that you've learned that you wish you would have known at the beginning of your time developing Magic?
For me, it's making the game accessible and fun, right? That I think early on we were trying, make it for the top tier players, make it more complex, more challenging. I would say more chess-like, and that now we're just like, hey, if it's accessible and fun, even our simple cards, what seems simple, the complexities of the environment still make it very challenging, and the top players will still rise to the top, the best players. But when we make the game more accessible and fun, we just bring in more players. And Magic is, I think Magic is a much better game now than where it was 10 years ago, because our audience is a lot bigger, because we have, the game's more accessible to people. So that's my one big learning.
Yeah. My answer is a variation of what Bill just said, and it's actually a lesson I learned from Richard Garfield directly. It took a little while, but I learned it directly from Richard, because the kind of feedback that I gave him when we were playing the alpha cards was the kind of feedback of, this is the game I want, and I wanted Magic to be the game for me, and then I learned that no, it has to be the game for everyone. Right? And what Richard was really good at was not only figuring out listening to what other people want. What he was good at, he took it at another level, which is, I'm going to figure out what they don't even know and can't even say that they want. But when I show them it, they will say, that's exactly what I want. Right? Like it's a lot of work, but we do it listening to all our players, talking with our players, understanding what our players want. But when you go another level and you understand what they're really looking for, and then you deliver them what they're really looking for, you might get an A- if you give them what they want, but you're going to get an A+ if you give them what they didn't even realize that they wanted.
Right.
And that was a lesson that Richard implemented very early on. And looking back, I really respect him for that.
Diversity of thought in design.
Yes.
You need to have diversity of thought.
Last question from Worth Wolpert himself. So
Worth.
you can blame Worth for this question.
Hashtag blame Worth.
Hello. Yes,
Everybody.
this question is for Charlemagne Cartinord. Why do you think it is that some people who are definitely not me have trouble with your name? I think this is for you, Charlie.
Yes. So Worth is pointing out the little story that we have for Magic's history. The very first time I got credited for Magic the Gathering, they accidentally misspelled my name.
In Alpha.
In Alpha. I called up Richard, and he was very apologetic, and he said, "Oh, we'll definitely fix it." And the next credits came out, and they had misspelled my name in a different way. So from then on, we decided this was fun, and we were going to keep doing it. So every future set, they continuously misspell my name, but yet in a new, unique way.
That's amazing.
Do they have you as like do they have you like a title next to your name? So it's like, man, they really don't like this guy. They just
What's your favorite?
keep switching Charlie with, Yeah.
So the most common one is Cantino.
Right.
Yeah.
And they theme them with sets, but
Right.
do you have a particular favorite?
So My favorite actually is for another game because when we put out Pokemon, I was Charlie Catino.
Nice.
Yes.
All right, well, we are out of time today. Thank you, Charlie and Bill, for joining
you.
us and
Thank
telling
you.
us. I didn't know a lot of that stuff that you told me. So
Ancestral
was
Recall.
fun.
I didn't know that Ancestral Recall was common.
We could
blew
tell
his
that,
mind.
that blew
Terrifying.
your mind.
Wow, blew my mind. The future we could have had.
I really enjoyed the trip down memory lane. It was
Yeah.
fun thinking about this
It was
stuff.
really fun looking through after again.
Vegas is going on right now. Coverage starts tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific time, right here on twitch.tv/magic. Paul's going to be there doing some commentary.
I will be covering, yeah, I didn't really have to brush up on Modern because Team Play Design did take down the Team Modern Super League, so we
they
have
did.
that on lockdown. Yeah, so tomorrow we will be covering Modern along with Modern on Saturday, and then Sunday, because of course there's 2 Grand Prix this weekend, we're going to be switching over to Limited, so we're going to be doing Day 2 of Limited on Sunday.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That should be good.
Yeah, so if you aren't able to make it, definitely tune in. Don't forget Signature Spellbook. Jace releases everywhere tomorrow, Friday. M19 previews are going on this weekend at Grand Prix Las Vegas, and then you'll start seeing them around the internet on Monday. And then join us next week on Thursday, where we'll have our own preview, Tezrit's second cousin.
That blue card.
That blue card. And we're going to be joined by Ethan Fleischer and Melissa DeTora to talk more about the set. And we're actually going to preview a bunch of cards because it's the last day of previews. So definitely tune in to that, and we will see you next week.